What if I told you that the fear keeping you up at night, the fear of growing old alone, could actually be the doorway to the most fulfilling chapter of your life? I know that sounds impossible right now. After 40 years of working with seniors across America, I've seen thousands facing this reality. Some crumbled under the weight of loneliness, but others, they discovered a secret that transformed their final decades into their best. Today, I'm breaking the silence about what really happens when you age alone, and the surprising truth that changed everything for me and countless others. The next 10 minutes might just rewrite your future. Let me be clear. I'm not here to offer empty platitudes or tell you that loneliness is sick. I felt that ache myself, sitting alone at the dinner table after my wife of 42 years passed, wondering if meaningful connection was behind me forever. But what I discovered, what I'm about to share with you, is that there's a profound difference between being alone and living a lonely life. The first is a circumstance, the second is a choice, and that choice has everything to do with how your story ends. You see, we've been sold a very specific version of what a good later life looks like. The golden retirement with your spouse by your side, the holidays surrounded by attentive children and adoring grandchildren, the community of lifelong friends who've known you since your hair was a different color. And if your reality doesn't match that picture, whether through death, divorce, distance, or design, it's easy to feel like you've somehow failed. I'm here to tell you that nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, some of the most joyful, purposeful, and connected seniors I've ever met are those who've had to reimagine their later years outside that traditional framework. In the next few minutes, I'll reveal the 3 mental shift, deeper connections in our 70s and 80s than we ever had in our youth. And most importantly, I'll show you why aging alone might actually be the unexpected gift that unlocks the authentic joy that's eluded you for decades. Let's start with the hardest truth. The dream you had, growing old with a lifetime partner, surrounded by attentive children and grandchildren, may not be your reality. Perhaps you've lost a spouse, gone through a painful divorce, never married, or your family has scattered across the country. Whatever brought you here, the first step is allowing yourself to fully grieve that lost expectation. I remember sitting in my empty house 6 months after Margaret died, surrounded by 5 decades of memories, and finally allowing myself to sob, uncontrollably, not just for her, but for the future we'd planned together, the trips never taken, the grandchildren we'd never see grow up together, the quiet mornings holding hands over coffee. That grief felt bottomless. But here's what nobody tells you. Grief this profound is not just an ending, it's also a beginning. It clears the ground for something new to grow. There are countless books and support groups for recent widows and widowers. There's precious little guidance for navigating the years or decades that follow. We're expected to either quickly move on, whatever that means, or resign ourselves to a diminished existence. Both options dishonor the complexity of our experience. The first mental shift came when I stopped asking, "Why me?" and started asking, "What now?" This isn't about forced positivity, it's about reclaiming your power as the author of your own story. The moment I stopped seeing myself as a victim of circumstance and started seeing myself as someone with choices, everything changed. Take Edward, a 79-year-old former engineer I met in a support group. After losing his wife and becoming estranged from his only son, Edward had resigned himself to a lonely death. "I'm just waiting for the end," he told me during our first conversation. His days had shrunk to a pitiful routine. Breakfast alone, in television, a solitary walk if the weather permitted, more television, then bed, the cycle repeated with crushing predictability. But something changed when Edward reluctantly agreed to fix a broken clock for another group member. That simple act of using his skills to help someone else sparked something. Within 6 months of making this mental shift from recipient to contributor, Edward had joined a community workshop, started teaching woodworking to troubled teens, and formed connections that gave his days new meaning. "I'm not just filling time anymore," he told me last month, his eyes bright with purpose. "These kids don't care about my arthritis or my hearing aid. They care about what I know and what I can teach them. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm living with purpose instead of just checking boxes." Edward's transformation highlights something crucial. Meaningful connection often flows from contribution, not just participation. When we bring our gifts, however simple, to others, we move from being defined by our lacks to being valued for our offerings. The second mental shift is equally powerful. Understanding that meaningful connection in later life often looks different than we expected. We've been conditioned to believe that only romantic partnerships and blood relations count as real connection. But research consistently shows that purposeful community involvement can provide equally meaningful bonds. After months of isolation, I reluctantly joined a local hiking group for seniors. These weren't lifetime friends. We didn't share grandchildren or decades of inside jokes. Gave me sympathy when my husband died. But my new friends in their 70s and 80s gave me understanding. There's a world of difference. That difference matters profoundly. Research from the Harvard Study of Adult Development, the longest study of adult happiness ever conducted, found that the quality of our close relationships is the strongest predictor of our well-being as we age. Not wealth, not fame, not professional achievement. Connection. But here's what's fascinating. Those connections don't have to be the ones we've always imagined. They can be formed at any stage of life. They can look completely different from our previous relationships. And sometimes they can be even deeper precisely because they're built on the wisdom and authenticity that come with age. This leads to the third mental shift. Recognizing that aging alone offers unique freedoms that coupled aging does not. For many of us who find ourselves alone later in life, decades of caretaking and compromise are behind us. While those roles brought deep meaning, their absence now creates space for a question many of us have never fully answered. What do you want? After 45 years of teaching high school English and raising 3 children, highlights something profound. Solitude can be transformed from a burden into a gift when we embrace its possibilities rather than mourn its limitations. The very same empty hours that can torture us with loneliness can also offer unprecedented freedom when approached differently. I'm not suggesting that aging alone is better than aging with a partner, only that it offers distinct opportunities that shouldn't be overlooked in our grief for what might have been. In my case, after decades of compromise about everything from vacation destinations to thermostat settings, I've discovered a surprising joy in making decisions based solely on my own preferences. There's a certain pleasure in eating breakfast for dinner without explanation, or rearranging the furniture at midnight, or spending an entire day reading without considering another person's needs. Let's talk practically about how to build a connected life as you age alone. The research is clear that isolated seniors face higher risks of depression, cognitive decline, and earlier mortality. But those who cultivate strategic connections show remarkable resilience. First, embrace structured socializing. Drop-in community. Centers provide little accountability. Instead, commit to regular activities with clear purposes beyond just meeting people. Weekly volunteer positions, classes with concrete skills to master, or groups organized around meaningful causes create natural bonds without forced interaction. Consider Doris, who at 81 began volunteering at her local hospital. "At first, I just wanted somewhere to be twice a week," she admitted. "But soon I realized the other volunteers were looking forward to seeing me, and patients remembered me. From week to week, We weren't just filling time together, we were making a difference together. That's a different kind of connection. Second, leverage technology selectively. Many seniors reject digital connections, feeling they're inferior to in-person relationships. Others become overly dependent on social media that provides the illusion of connection without substance. The sweet spot is using technology to enhance real-world relationships. My weekly video calls with my grandchildren in Seattle include virtual chess games and cooking together, activities that create memories, not just conversations. Technology can also expand your community beyond geographic limitations. After Margaret died, I joined an online grief support group specifically for widowers over 70. The men in this group understood my experience in ways even my closest local friends couldn't. We've never met in person, but our twice-monthly video conversations have become a lifeline, proof that meaningful connection doesn't always require physical presence. Third, consent can become isolating. Innovative co-housing communities, home-sharing programs, and naturally occurring retirement communities, NORCs, provide independence with built-in connection. After Margaret died, I eventually moved to a community where I have my own apartment but share certain spaces with others. The casual daily interactions over mail collection or in the community garden have become as meaningful as planned social events. Fourth, and this might surprise you, embrace the spiritual dimension of aging alone. Whether through formal religious practice or personal contemplation, connecting with something larger than yourself provides meaning that transcends circumstance. My daily meditation practice has transformed how I experience solitude, turning empty hours into periods of profound connection with myself and something greater. This spiritual dimension doesn't require religious belief. It's about finding meaning in your unique journey and recognizing that your story, even the painful chapters, holds wisdom that matters. Some of the most connected seniors I know have found purpose in sharing their hard-earned wisdom through mentoring, writing memoirs, or simply being present for others, navigating similar paths. Fifth, nurture your physical well-being intentionally. The mind-body connection grows more pronounced with age, and physical health challenges can exacerbate feelings of isolation. Regulate itself. Perhaps most importantly, aging alone requires us to redefine our relationship with asking for and receiving help. Many of us were raised with fierce independence as a core value, but interdependence, the mutual exchange of support, creates the strongest communities. When I recently needed cataract surgery, accepting rides from neighbors I'd previously helped with computer problems wasn't admitting defeat. It was participating in the beautiful economy of community care. This reciprocity is essential. If you only give help but never receive it, you deprive others of the joy and purpose that comes from contributing. If you only receive help but never give it, you miss the empowerment that comes from knowing you still have value to offer. The healthiest connections involve both. Let me tell you about Martha, who came to my support group 5 years ago. At 76, she'd lost her husband of 50 years and was diagnosed with Parkinson's just months later. "This isn't the ending I worked for," she said through tears at her first meeting. "I did everything right, saved money, stayed healthy, built a good marriage, and now I'm facing the hardest part alone." Martha's situation embodied everything we fear about aging alone. Physical decline without a devoted caretaker, holidays without family traditions to anchor them, everyday decisions with no one to consult, and the terrifying uncertainty about who would notice if something happened to her. For months, Martha came to meetings but rarely spoke. She'd lost weight, her hands trembled constantly, and she admitted she sometimes went days without speaking to another person. The path ahead looked bleak, but slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to change. Another group member connected Martha with a better neurologist who adjusted her Parkinson's medication. Someone else mentioned a pet adoption program specifically for seniors, which led to Martha adopting an older cat who gave her days new routine and purpose. Another member invited her to a community choir that welcomed all abilities, where Martha rediscovered her love of music, each small connection built upon the last. The choir led to friendships, which led to regular dinner groups. The improved medical care led to better mobility, which allowed Martha to and raised a glass. "I want to tell you something I never thought I'd say," she began. "If Harold hadn't died, as painful as that was, I never would have discovered who I truly am. I spent 50 years as someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's employee. Only in being truly alone did I finally meet myself." She gestured around the room. "And I never would have found all of you. This isn't the family I expected, but it's exactly the family I need." That moment crystallized everything I've learned about aging alone. The path through grief to genuine joy isn't about replacing what was lost. It's about discovering what else is possible when we stop fighting our reality and start creating within it. Martha's story isn't unusual among those who navigate this territory successfully. The initial devastation of finding yourself alone in later life can, with the right mindset and practical steps, transform into a period of unexpected growth and connection, not despite the solitude, but sometimes because of what that solitude makes possible. The truth about aging alone is not what most people think. It's not an automatic sentence to isolation and sadness, nor is it simply a challenge to make the best of. At its most profound level, it's an invitation to a kind of freedom and authenticity that many people never experience. This doesn't mean there won't be difficult days. Of course there will be. Days when you'd give anything to have someone beside you to share a beautiful sunset, or help you interpret confusing medical news, or simply hold your hand. Those moments of longing don't disappear entirely. They're part of being human, part of having loved and lost. But between those moments lies the possibility of a life more authentically yours than ever before. A life where connections are chosen, not obligatory, where time serves your deepest values, not others' expectations. Where you finally discover who you've always been beneath the roles you've played. I think about my friend Robert, who at 83 told me, "For the first time in my life, I'm not someone's son or husband or father or boss first. I'm just Robert. It took me this long to figure out who that is, and I'm enjoying his company more than I expected." That's the paradoxical gift that can come from aging alone. The chance to finally come home to yourself, perhaps for the first time, to discover that who recognize its value. If you're watching this and feeling the weight of facing your later years alone, I want you to know something. You are exactly where you need to be to discover what matters most. The ending of your story has not been written, and with the right mindset and practical steps, the final chapters might contain more joy than you can currently imagine. Start small. Today, make one choice that acknowledges your new reality rather than resisting it. Reach out to one person who might understand. Take one step toward a community organized around purpose, not just socialization. Allow yourself to grieve what's lost, but also to be curious about what might be possible. The poet Mary Oliver asked, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" That question doesn't expire with age or circumstance. If anything, it becomes more urgent, more deserving of a thoughtful answer. The choice, as always, is yours.